everybody, welcome once again to my little Range Rover Classic that I built on an Axial Scx10.2 chassis. As I'd mentioned previously, I actually am looking to change out the Vanquish Portals that I've got on this specific model. Initially the idea was to replace these Vanquish Portals which I've got here, and they are truly quite beautiful works of art. But to change these portals, ultimately putting a set of Xtra speed portals onto the truck, and just sort of see how the difference in cost really affects my experience as an average user, someone who just goes out on the trails. And really I'm not sure there's going to be a huge difference, but that was the initial idea. But upon greater thought, I realized that one of the key things that has always bugged me about this specific truck has been the ride height. The fact that these wheels and tires just sit way too far away from the arches, it's just something that just didn't sit right, especially for a truck that I wanted to look very scale. And as a result of that, I think what I'm going to end up doing instead is taking the Xtra speed main axles, putting back the original straight axles that I had from the kit, as you can see here, and then ultimately allowing the car to not sit on portals, less clearance, but look more realistic. And I really think this is something that that will help the scale appearance and overall will not affect my use of the vehicle. And I think that's the key thing here, is just knowing that what the purpose of this vehicle is really to be just a trail driver. It's not something that has to clear huge obstacles. It's not something that's competitive. After all, with a body shell of this weight, it's just never going to be competitive in any environment, and I wouldn't enter competitions anyway with it. So knowing exactly what I want of this truck, I've decided instead to put straight axles on using the Xtra speeds. So if you guys have a look, you can see that down here, these are the Xtra speed axles that I will be looking to put onto the Range Rover. Really quite nicely built. I'm not sure, and I seriously don't know. In fact, they look quite likely to have just been cast to me. But based off the dollars and cents, I think, you know, they're not a bad option, especially for something that's not going to be used hard in competition. Something which I'm, from my perspective, just going to use for trail driving. Heavy duty enough. And what I do like about these as compared with the Vanquish is that I can just fit on the end of it either portals or the straight axles, so I don't have to go spending a ton of money altering whether this is going to be for the straight axles or the portals. It's a good option. It's a good option. So let's just see how these put together, and I'll update you guys once I've done it. So the very first thing to take note of is, if you look at these, you can tell quite clearly now that in fact they are cast. Again, I really couldn't have expected them to be anything other than cast, because of the price, right? And it's still not a bad thing. Let's just see how they hold out. The second thing though to take into consideration is that all the painted surfaces will need to be sanded down where the bearings sit. Now, the reality is that these bearing holes, it's just an extra caking of paint around here. I'm really just going to end up using a bit of sandpaper on that, and then we'll just see how. You can see down here that if we look at that, that's the internals of the axle. Sorry about that, it's just not focusing so well. There you go. Acceptable quality, definitely cast. Let's see how these put together. So as I was mentioning, these bearing holes need some grinding, and the best way to do it is you actually get yourself a socket wrench like this, and you basically just put it in and you just start twisting it like that. And by doing that, you actually will clear enough space where it's just there, and as well down here. You can sort of see down here, these holes also need it. Once they're done, then you can actually insert the bearings quite easily, as well as take them out. And I think that's the key for me, because with all of these items, if you don't have the ability to take the bearings out easily, you will end up trying to hammer these things out, ripping them apart. When it comes to servicing, it's an absolute pain. So make sure you do that. Now, something to take note of is that the original axles, if you look at them, the fit where the output shaft goes is in the main axle itself. By comparison, if you compare it, you can see that with the Xtra speeds, the actual, let's get that in focus, where are we? Here we are. The output shaft is the separate piece. So that means when you end up putting together the gears, they will not be sitting inside the main axle. Instead, if you look at this here, the main axle itself is where you will just have the main bezel of the axle resting, but the output shaft will be, rather than sitting inside here, it will actually be sitting on the external bit. Okay, so that's something to take note of, because as well that'll mean then when you're looking at directions of inputting the gears, you're looking this way, like that. So the gear will have to go in this way. So after a bit of naffing around, we finally got the axles done. This is the front one, so you can see that I'm using the central portion of the Xtra speeds. And these external shaft positions here and here are from the original Axial Scx10.2. Everything went together very easily, just a bit of sanding required, and that was literally it. So that's the front, and down here you can see this is the rear. Again, using the Scx10.2 output shafts. Where are we? Let's just get this to focus, sorry about that. But anyway, getting the Scx10.2 output shafts here and on the other side as well. So let's just see what it looks like now. I've got to now actually remove the axles from that truck there. It'll just be a case of removing the linkages at the bottom and then putting these new. Looking forward to seeing a lowered truck. And for removal of the axles, it's going to be very simple. We're taking the axles here, 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 taking the drive shafts disconnection here, and likewise at the rear here as well as delinking ourselves from the shock absorbers. To do all of this, I will obviously just take the tires off as well and the wheels off, and that'll just make everything come off a lot easier. And then we will replace the two axles, and we can actually do a comparison of the axles out of the box, or rather off the chassis once I've done that. So here you can see that we've actually removed one side already. The easiest way to get the removal done, especially if you're using the Vanquish Portals, is to actually remove the link first. After removing the link, then you can get access to the inner bolt that holds the shock absorber in, and then you can actually pull that out, and it all comes out very, very easily at that point in time. So that's the quickest, easiest way that I found to get it done. Of course, I'm leaving all the shell on, etc., because this is hard body that's been bolted onto the chassis quite well, and it also just provides me with a way to just hold the chassis on its side. Makes working on it easier. Before removing the final shock absorber, I find it easier, as well as this final link, I find it easier to actually undo the drive shaft, the rear drive shaft at this point in time as well. So I'll remove that, pull that away, then take the final link off, and the whole axle should come off. And you can see here the drive shaft's been removed. This link's been removed. Now it's time to remove the final two upper links with one bolt across there. And then this whole axle should come out quite easily. Now, if you grab a look at the Vanquish Portals, you will actually notice that they are literally one piece. So the machining occurs straight across the axle. And the key issue that I have with the way the Vanquish Portals act is because of this. It's very strong, yes, it's beautifully machined, yes, but whereby this express axle, I can convert this straight away to a portal, because there is a separate portal conversion
that just bolts onto this edge. I can keep this axle on and just unbolt the ends. The axle itself can stay on the car, and that is a really fantastic plus. Whereas in this case, if I want to do anything here, I've got to remove and replace the entire mechanism. So that's the reason why I think, you know, this Xtra Speed is really a pretty good design for the Portals. Let me just get the additional pieces on the Xtra Speed, and then I can actually show you what I mean. So you can actually see down here, these are the conversion kit parts that are actually available that can just literally bolt on to the axles, and it's a really easy conversion. So comes with everything, comes with the links as well, and that's a real added bonus as well. So this is definitely a huge plus for the Xtra Speeds, which I really like. I've also got these Traxxas ball ends that I'm going to crack open. The reason being that I haven't yet replaced all of the ball ends in the original chassis. So we'll do that at the same time. Now, one very interesting thing that I found, it's actually very cool, is that with regards to the Xtra Speed axles, if you look at where the suspension shock absorber mounts to, it mounts into these upper positions here. And what I do like about these shocks is that the mount position allows for full threading. So in other words, where with the Vanquish shocks mounting position, it was really just a straight through hole with a bolt on the other side. This one is threaded, and when it's threaded, it really helps, because I don't like fiddling around with bolts and all on one side, etc. So this is a very clean, easy to maintain setup, and I must say that from my perspective as well, it works well. The only issue being that you've got to make sure you use longer screws to mount the shocks, because it will go through 2 points here and here in order to reinforce itself. So that's the only thing to take note of, but a great setup. I'm liking these Xtra Speeds more and more as I work through them. And I think down here you can see what I mean when I say that the screw is a long screw, and it actually goes through the shock mount, and it just goes all the way through. So you've got to make sure you use the right hardware for that, and the hardware is actually included with the kit as well. Now, at the same time, in fact, the screw that is used actually for those center links as well, it is included in the kit, and that is a longer screw. So make sure you use that as well. So I've basically got I've got the axles already on the car now. I'm going to put the original wheels on and tires on first, just to see how the car sits. But I will be using these GPM 9mm hexes. So I want to push the wheels out a bit more, just to make it look a bit more aggressive as well. We'll just see what these look like. And now the Range Rover is finally all back together in one piece. Sitting a lot lower. I could probably get it a bit lower if I just let the suspension rest a bit more. But it's definitely much better. The axles, as I mentioned, were very easy fit. They went together very nicely. The overall build quality seemed to be very acceptable. Now, the only problem I had was with the front axles. Xtra Speed should have provided the hardware, because the screw that mounts the upper links is required to be a lot longer than is typical. A 30mm screw just doesn't cut it. It's not long enough. 30mm was all I had. Unfortunately, whilst the rear one set of axles had the hardware, the second set didn't. So that was a bit disappointing, I must say. But overall, quality very good. Whether or how it actually ends up driving compared with the Vanquish and longevity, I'm sure it won't last as long. I'm sure it's not as robust. But for the purposes of a trail truck,
I'm betting it'll be more than enough. I mean, time will tell. I will end up actually doing a running review on this. Overall, very happy with the way they look. It's got the skid plate so it won't scratch up. Let's actually just see how this goes. It's going to be a very, very interesting ride with this fella. I'm just really happy how he looks now. I'm going to probably lower the suspension just a bit more. I didn't change the wheels out yet. I probably will, but we'll see how this goes. Again, the other key thing that I must say that I'm very, very impressed with is the idea behind having the portals, which are these kits here, and having these portals just bolt on to the axles. These can actually be put onto the standard axles as well of the Axial Scx10.2, so you don't need to change the main axle body. It's a great way to just get into portals relatively cheaply, so worth considering. I certainly hope you all have enjoyed seeing this transformation of the Range Rover. I'm very happy with how it sits now, and we'll look forward to taking it out. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all or seeing you all soon with further adventures, not only with this truck, but my others. Thank you very much.